Hi, this is Bill Fitzgerald, Vice President of Ecosystems and Growth at SandboxAQ, live from our studio in Davos. Very excited to be joined here from my friend Charlie Roberts. He's a partner at ARC Ventures. You oversee the investments of your firm and have interactions across numerous portfolio companies, from technology companies to biology companies. How are you seeing the field of AI evolving in practical use?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, there's never been a better time to be alive, probably, but certainly investing in innovation. It's the curve is only getting steeper.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing that quite consistently. I think with AI, look, it's tricky because obviously no one has the perfect crystal ball. Mm-hmm. I guess the analogy I sometimes use is, I don't know how long exactly it was, but some number of years from when the enabling technology existed for, say, Uber, mm-hmm. until Uber actually launched. It took the realization and the convergence of those things being productionized and turned into something useful for mm-hmm. people. Mm-hmm. I think we see the same thing with AI. There's so much just there for the taking, and I think we're seeing this whole now long tail of even many, many new unicorns just popping up within the last few years, which are mainly saying, let's build on the shoulders of giants. Mm-hmm. Let's build these models that have been develop further, these models that have been built, some cases by others, some cases open source, and just let's make them useful for a population for a certain reason. And I think I am more confident than ever that the biggest scientific unlocks that have ever occurred will occur when we look forward, say, 10 years, in the next 10 years, and because of AI. Yeah. And then I think there's a big question about where does the R&D research go? We do not think that we're going to see scaling laws necessarily slow down, or they might change. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of innovations now also being done in secret. That's a big difference I think I've observed over the last 10 years. And so that's very interesting, because what then happens, potentially, is one, it may hamper some of the open source. It certainly might hamper competition. Mm-hmm. But more so, if you think about all of the takeoff curves that we see in this space, it makes it more likely that someone generates an architectural innovation or improvement of the same sort of level of a step change as the transformer scaled up is, which was a 2017 paper, but we only really realized in the last 3, 4, 5 years quite how impactful it would be. And it becomes very difficult, maybe in certain settings, for others to catch up at all. Yeah. And that could change. One of the ways that might happen is AI generating its own improvements to AI, because AI is code, and AI can write code, and AI can improve code. Yep. And you can have all of these meta layers of hierarchical improvement. Yeah. And I think we're only really just beginning to tap at that.
And tell me about how you think about the next kind of slew of problems that AI could potentially solve, and how they'll lend to revenue growth, new opportunities, novel therapies. Just the opportunities abound.
Yeah, well, big compound question. I'm not sure my answer will do it justice, but I'll try. I think moving towards really hard and real world benchmarks, which have mechanisms for preventing contamination and just leakage, would be a good thing that we should all spend more time on thinking about, learning about, reading about, and doing. Yeah, especially in the real world. I think it's going to be very interesting with some of these new AI for science companies, of which there are already, I can think of more than 10. Yeah. I can think of almost none, literally a couple of years ago. Right. Where you might start getting real world evals in the atom space or in biology space, like, does this cancer cell die or not? Yeah. Will that then translate or not to a human drug or not? These are kind of meta evals, but more so obviously in the space of, say, does this catalyze a reaction in the way we expect or hope it would, or does this material have a certain tensile strength or ductile strength or whatever? So those are interesting things, I think, as we move into sort of real world benchmarks or evals. Mm-hmm. There's a huge opportunity in that. Yeah. And these are not data that are on the internet, because they require. So they're not part of the sort of 15 trillion tokens of this corpus that's been used to train all the LLMs. They're part of a new go forward. You need to interact with the world to get those data in real time.
I think a lot about that validation, right? The validation of an in silico model in a wet lab in the drug discovery and development phase. That is going to accelerate things in such a material way. When you can develop and design a molecule in silico and then validate that in the lab and then repeatedly do that and then go back and prove it out again, that is something that science has looked to do forever.
100%, and I mean, kind of takes us on to, I'm definitely not the first person, I definitely won't be the last, saying that one of the most fundamental applications of AI will be in health, or is already becoming in health. I think we're very close to seeing many AI-generated or AI-discovered drugs in at least late-stage clinical studies, and then hopefully quite soon some marketed. We already have, there are some in clinical studies already. I think maybe it's just at the beginning and is only really being applied in sort of niche use cases, but I think it would be very interesting for other places as well, you know, including in finance, including in macro, geopolitics, et cetera, thinking about running all of these counterfactual, essentially randomized control trials and simulations. I know it's something Sandbox is thinking a lot about. In fact, maybe I could flip the question to you about, learn a bit about how Sandbox is thinking about simulating in different domains and where that might lead.
Yeah, I think the paradigm you just described is one that's a great point. I mean, if you can standardize around things that are known, the principles of chemistry and physics, and then bring in novel ideas, and then allocate and then bring those two parties together, you are going to get to ground faster, and you're going to get to the causal nature of things quicker. You're going to understand how things operate in space in a material way.
But the reality is, no matter how big of a company you build and how well you hire, 99+% of the smart people who are doing great things work outside of your four walls. Right? So opening these things up and setting them up in such a way that great people can run great models over it, and you build a community aspect is really attractive. That, I think, is going to be a really interesting thing to watch, is that dynamic between the giant mega labs and the open source.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm most excited about in that realm, Charlie, is it used to be a time where there wasn't real collaboration between between departments within big pharma, between collaborators in biotech. I loved your statement that the smartest people are generally, can contribute are outside the four walls, to continue the way in which we've built this industry and service patients through collaborations with healthcare centers, with academia, with other companies that are looking or maybe have other pieces of this. And I do think that AI is going to welcome that, and I'm excited to see where that takes us.
Well, to your point, I think it's also easy to forget, as you say, the importance of collaborations of all different kinds and sizes and shapes, and also of institutions, and of governments, not-for-profits, philanthropic endowments, all of those kinds of things, putting cart before horse and taking a big risk. So a good example, and also for us not judging them too fast. Good example is the UK biobank, which was, I don't remember how long now, maybe 20, 25 years. It was at least begun. Maybe it was 15 years in reality, and quite early on, like, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years into it, all happening, people were like, oh, it's a failure, it's yielded nothing. Same with the Human Genome Project, which is, these are foundational things without which and then you get all sorts of things being built on the shoulders of these giants. There are tons of examples where you just have to swing for the fence, build something big, put data into the public domain, see what the community and ecosystem does with it, and continue to build those resources at risk and help organize them and consult with the community, and don't build something stupid.
Yeah, and I think that's just a wonderful opportunity. As you pointed out, and we'll close with, it's a heck of a time to be alive.
It's a heck of a time to be alive. We're seeing amazing things every day, seeing amazing things here at Davos, and very excited to see what's next and how AI can be helpful and not harmful, and I'm at least 51% positive.
Yes, I am with you. I love it. Love it. Charlie, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us at Sandbox Studios in Davos. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Nice point.